I have to say that I'm beginning to find this endeavor I've embarked upon more and more fun, especially since I kinda promised myself to only really talk about things that I genuinely like, and even though it's becoming more and more challenging, and I do welcome that because it forces me to actually use my brain, and I think that's something I've been missing sorely. And the more I think about the future projects and how am I going to avoid getting into the negative portion of anything I am going to talk about, all of that makes things way more interesting for me. Finding ways how to talk about something I find interesting and I like without making it first thing first negative, and without also making it sound like I am giving a, let's say, forced opinion, or try to persuade someone to start liking the thing as well based on what I say about it, which is also something that I really, really want to avoid, since the only thing I really wanted to achieve by recording myself this way was to have a reason to simply focus on things that make me happy and that I enjoy or enjoyed in the past and right now. I don't want to sound like someone who's lecturing anyone on anything, because I simply don't think that I have the capacity to do so in pretty much any way, shape, or form, no matter the topic, since, well, I don't want to sound like some sort of an expert or, God forbid, an avid fan of anything. And all in all, I am truly enjoying the challenge of staying within the boundaries I've set for myself. I've also thought some more about the way I define the base premise of these recordings to really just focus on things I absolutely like through and through, with no aspects that would make me unhappy now in the current day, because some things, my perception on them definitely changed over the time I've mentioned Dragon Age, and there are some more that I can think of, and how I really hope that this won't change in any dramatic way, just so that I won't ruin my own conscience and integrity, because at the end of the day, I made this for myself to improve my English and the state of my mind. So it would feel rather pointless if I just switched gears out of nowhere. So that's about the intro. And then I would like to talk about Asterix in Corsica, which is the 20th volume. It begins in the forest surrounding the ghost village, where the children are playing a version of cowboys and Indians with Roman soldiers and gold warriors. And since they are true children of their parents, it also turns into a big brawl after one of the kids calls the fish the parents of the other one rotten. Meanwhile, the village is getting ready for their celebration of a victory of the chieftain Vercingetorix, and they are obviously doing so by organizing a banquet, this time inviting some of the people that helped Asterix and Obelix on their adventures in the previous volumes. Unfortunately for the Roman soldiers, this celebration also means that the Gauls attack all the camps surrounding their village, and usually the soldiers attempt to escape their impending doom by going off for some maneuvers. But unfortunately, this time, one of the camps is ambushed by a soldier escorting a prisoner from Corsica, and he forces the poor officer in the camp to take over the prisoner, since after learning how ferocious the Gauls are, he is going to join the maneuvers instead. Now the guests finally arrived at the village, and meanwhile the wives are having fun, while the chieftain of the village sends Asterix and Obelix to check on the camps if by any chance some of them are still populated by some soldiers, to invite their guests for their annual beating of the occupants. Fortunately, one of the camps is currently guarding the prisoner, and thus full of waiting soldiers ready for picking, and thus the men in the village and the guests are getting ready by drinking the potion to go and have some fun. When the beating begins, there is a picture where a guest from Spain or Hispania is chasing a Roman soldier with the horns on his helmet as an angry bull, while the rest of the soldiers and even the officer are meeting high up in the air, where they get escorted by the Gauls' punches. Then the prisoner wakes up from his siesta, and the Corsicans are portrayed as quite interesting people, similar to the Brits who have their tea at 5 p.m. and their weekends. The Corsicans have their siesta, and we find out how the prisoner was exiled from Corsica and who his enemies are, and the Gauls obviously offer him help in getting back both to Corsica and the loot that was stolen from the people there. Before they leave, the villagers give the prisoner some gifts, and beforehand, Asterix forbid Obelix from bringing Idefix because he thought it would be too dangerous. So clever Obelix gets around this by pretending to give Idefix to the Corsican as a gift so that he can bring him with himself. They need to find a ship to get to Corsica, and who would have guessed that the people that the Corsican hired as escorts were our well-known friends, pirates. They plan on betraying their customers, and instead of smuggling them safely to Corsica, they'll steal everything they have. Unfortunately for them, the Corsican is accompanied by Asterix and Obelix, and in turn, when the pirates find out about that, they promptly escort themselves from the ship in a small lifeboat, leaving the ship empty with the passengers. They swim to the coast and they leave one last surprise gift unintentionally on the ship. The Romans are alerted to their presence, but since they have learned the ways of Corsicans to not take things very easy, they aren't particularly perturbed by any of that. Meanwhile, the pirates are trying to reclaim their ship, and when they are searching it for anything dangerous, an unfortunately lit torch ignites the fumes coming out of a Corsican cheese that the previous passengers left there before they disembarked. In the true Corsican way, they meet a druid from the village the prisoner is from, called Lethargix, who's gathering mistletoe, and he's doing that by napping under a tree. Asterix asks if that's the way he gathers it, and the exile answers yes, he is waiting for it to fall off the tree. Meanwhile, now the praetor is informed of the exile coming back to Corsica, and he starts concocting a plan to dip and leave the soldiers to face the Corsicans' wrath. Meanwhile, he'll be far away with all the loot. He sends a patrol of legionnaires as a distraction to the village to try and recapture the escaped prisoner, and the village is alerted of their presence by a series of living devices, like a donkey having its tail tugged on and a wild boar squealing. Funnily enough, the soldiers reach the village, and their leader, a young and ambitious soldier, attempts to search a house for the exiled prisoner. A sister of one of the village's warriors answers the doors, which angers her brother, who then forces the young soldier to retreat, and then the brother tells his sister to not court disaster by flirting with any Romans, which is a pun on the fleeing soldier's name, who's called Courting Disastus. Then the soldiers attempt to search the forest for the prisoner. They meet Asterix and Obelix, and then they meet each other in the air after they get what they deserve, while the praetor is trying to escape with his loot. Great panel where some prisoners, Corsican, are hard at work at building a road, laying around, doing pretty much nothing, and one of the defectors comes to them saying that he has work for them, and they call him not just a traitor, but foul-mouthed as well. They do drive the praetor crazy by refusing to work any faster than one little amphora per trip to the ship where he is trying to load all the loot that he has stolen onto, which is the ship of the pirates as well. His own soldiers find out about his plan and force him to lead the charge, as Asterix, Obelix, and the Corsicans are pushing their way through the poor Roman legionnaires. The praetor attempts one last escape, but Asterix and Obelix sink the ship and then carry him over to the Corsicans. The two big leaders of the clans then finally make up after figuring out that none of them betrayed anyone, and the imprisonment and exile were just not exactly coincidence, but there was no involvement from any of the other clans. On their way back after a big banquet, obviously celebrating the victory, Asterix re- requests Idefix as a present from the Corsican leaders. When they get back to the village, there is one more banquet, and Idefix is seen napping right next to Gagged Cacophonix, uh, since he learned the custom of siestas properly. And that's the end of the 20th volume Asterix in Corsica.